I'm here at ArirangTV, which has worked very hard this year to uphold its position as an accurate and reliable source of information. In addition to domestic news, it covered global headlines in line with its role as an international broadcaster. In Part 1 of Reflections on 2023, we sit down with the MCs of ArirangTV's representative programs to look back and take a look at the key issues that took the spotlight in 2023. Reflections on 2023 Part 1 begins now. The studio looks empty and without a set. This is ArirangTV's smart virtual studio that introduces cutting-edge broadcasting technology. The Roundtable is a program that highlights the present and future of Korea, one that has emerged as a pivotal global nation. We take a look at this year's biggest issues with Professor Yoon Suk Yeol, an expert on inter-Korean relations and the host of the program. This is the Roundtable's virtual studio where technology brings to life a blank screen. I'm here with the program's host, Dr. Yoon Suk. Dr. Bong, hello.
Hello.
Now, Dr. Bong, you are a seasoned broadcaster and a regular face here at ArirangTV. How does this virtual studio compare to the ones that you're more used to, the regular ones?
Well, I began to realize what virtual actually means by doing the recording in this studio every Monday. And it is a great feeling that there's no limitations to what you can achieve based upon your desires and imaginations. You can put the CGs and video images, even statistical information in terms of the pies and charts in the background to enhance the deliverability of the discussion and information.
Now, you covered numerous issues in the past year. What are some issues that stood out for you the most?
For the nature of our program, we cover global issues, important issues in a given week. But we mostly cover the security-related issues. It is very unfortunate that a lot of issues are very tragic. So I'm hoping that in the year 2024, our program would cover some positive developments in global affairs.
While the war between Russia and Ukraine was still going on, Hamas launched a preemptive attack, firing thousands of rockets toward Israel on October 7, 2023. With tensions escalating in the Middle East and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declaring the annihilation of Hamas, global security is heading toward an unpredictable landscape. As the conflict intensifies, the number of deaths in the Gaza Strip near 20,000, many of whom are women and children, with more than 50,000 others injured. At the same time, protests continue throughout the world, including the United States, where protesters are divided into pro-Palestine and pro-Israel groups, with each calling for an end to the conflict. The collapse of the medical system in the Gaza Strip puts patients at risk, and with civilian casualties increasing, criticism from the international community is rising. And the UN believes that half of the population in Gaza are starving. On December 12th, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. However, the US voted against the resolution, saying it only benefits Hamas. The resolution had been vetoed by the US in the UN Security Council earlier on December 8th.
I think the United States veto was expected by many states already. But at the same time, many countries in the world are expressing concern over the excessive use of force. I think all of us need to pay attention to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' warning that even though Hamas brutality in the beginning on October 7th should be condemned by everyone, it does not justify the collective punishment of Palestinian people.
Recently, foreign media outlets reported that Hamas is highly likely to be using rocket-propelled grenade launchers made by North Korea. However, Pyongyang denied such rumors, saying the reports were not true. If the armed conflict is further prolonged, it's highly likely that it'll emerge as a serious risk, not only to the Middle Eastern economy, but also to European countries that have close connections with the region and to the global economy as a whole.
I think countries like South Korea should be more active in promoting global cooperation, as it is important for us, for middle powers, to have a more stable and rule-based world. When the wars are over, I think there will be a very serious debate on the problems we have in the current international mechanism for peacekeeping. I hope South Korea can play a leading role in such a debate, not least as the country will be sitting on the Security Council as a non-permanent member for the next 2 years.
This is the set of issues and insiders that shares the perspectives of pundits on a broad spectrum of interests.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min San-hee. I also have Professor Kim Young-jin at Sogang University live on the line as well. Professor Kim, it's been a while. Welcome back.
We'll look at the major issues of 2023 as selected by anchor Min San-hee, who's been hosting ArirangTV's afternoon news since the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me here in the studio is Issues and Insiders host, anchor Min San-hee. Sunny, hello.
Ms. Sarang, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. Now, Sunny, you covered hundreds of topics this year, but if you could sum up this year in one keyword, what would it be?
According to one US dictionary, it claims that authentic was the key word for the year 2023, given the rapid advances in artificial intelligence and, of course, the ensuing debate on what is real and what is not. Now, as a person working in the field of journalism, I suppose authentic is an important word as we seek to share facts and not fiction.
Sure. Now, Sunny, you've been covering news here for the first time in 2000, wasn't it?
Right, the year 2000 here at ArirangTV, yes.
And during that time, I'm sure that viewers have come to know you as a very credible source of information, so there's no need to worry on that regard. But with regards to this year, of the numerous issues, were there any that stood out more than the rest?
I think I would highlight the official lifting of COVID-19 related measures by the Korean government this past summer, essentially changing the pandemic into an endemic for everyone here in the country. Now, I have to say it was a liberating moment for all of us, both physically and psychologically, and it was also great being able to have Pundit here in the studio with us to talk to us instead of talking with them remotely.
COVID-19, the virus that halted the entire world in 2020. Face masks were purchased according to the year of birth, private gatherings were restricted due to social distancing, and the start of school was delayed. COVID-19 expanded non-face-to-face methods within companies and consumers, while increasing the proportion of online classes in the education sector and changing the roles of schools, teachers, and parents. In this way, COVID-19 changed all sectors of the society, including politics, economy, and education. After 3 years and 4 months, the World Health Organization in May officially lifted COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern. In the same month, South Korea also declared COVID-19 an endemic.
코로나 위기 경보를 심각에서 경계로 조정을 하고 6월부터 본격 적용하기로 했습니다.
Initially, the Korean government, as well as the society and people, work together to mitigate COVID-19. There are exemplary cases being reported to the world, the way we respond to COVID-19, the way we mitigate the infectious virus, and the way we handle the healthcare systems. I think we did excellent jobs, and that really demonstrates how COVID-19 should be mitigated.
This transition to an endemic accelerated the recovery of daily life. We saw the return of international events which had been postponed due to COVID-19, as well as performances and festivals that had been cancelled due to social distancing. The long-suppressed desire to travel led to an explosion of overseas traveling, giving rise to the new term, revenge travel. Since July, more than 2 million Korean travelers each month traveled abroad, recovering to about 75% of the pre-pandemic levels in 2019. The number of foreign tourists visiting South Korea also rose, revitalizing the travel industry that had been stagnant for several years. According to the Korea Tourism Organization, the cumulative number of visitors to Korea from January to October was 8.9 million, an increase of 304% compared to last year. And it's not just the tourism industry, but the franchise industry as well. The domestic franchise industry is now expanding its presence to the overseas market by opening local stores in the US, Mongolia, and in Southeast Asia.
Well, we assume that there will be more unknown problems like COVID-19, maybe different names, of course, infectious disease and other social and natural disasters. And even there are many known problems such as climate changes. So that societies here, not just the government, but civil societies and particularly people, we should work together to deal with all the wicked problems which cannot be resolved by one particular entity.
At the other side of a long dark tunnel, it's now time to look back and prepare for future pandemics that could return at any time. News Generation is a daily news program that explores current issues centered on the MZ generation, with participants in their 20s and 30s from around the world.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
We'll review 2023 with anchor and host Shin Ye-eun, who's known for her empathetic hosting. I'm here with the host of News Generation, Shin Ye-eun. Ye-eun, hello.
Welcome, Bisona. Welcome to my studio.
Now, Ye-eun, you're an MZ yourself. So what would you say are some characteristics more commonly found among the MZ generation?
Bisona, I think our generation is usually confined to stereotypes, like we're individualistic, we're nonchalant towards what's happening around the world.
Sure.
But while hosting this program, I met so many different young adults that were interested in many issues, such as economics, politics, even environmental issues. So I think our generation can be traded down to the word working for a bigger cause.
Ah, working for a better future, aren't they?
Yes.
All right. Now, as a daily news program, I would imagine that you have already covered hundreds of topics. It's probably harder to find topics that you haven't already delved into. So among the hundreds of topics, what would you say stood out the most for you?
I think the biggest topic that comes to mind is low birth rates. South Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world, and because of that, we've had so many different episodes related to it. For instance, I remember once talking about the kangaroo tribes, including myself, a lot of millennials and Gen Z still will live with their parents because they would rather go through the new route, not getting married and then having kids. Instead, they would just choose to live with their parents while saving up money. So low birth rates often birthed out so many different episodes that come to my mind.
In a situation where the population decline is certainly no longer news, Statistics Korea's numbers indicate the country's total birth rate hit an all-time low in the third quarter of this year. South Korea is the lowest among the major OECD countries, and its low birth rate crisis is expected to have accelerated in the fourth quarter, falling to 0.6. Even the global community is paying special attention to Korea's unusually low birth rate. In a column titled, "Is South Korea Disappearing?" New York Times columnist Ross Douthat analyzed that Korea's population decline could proceed even more rapidly than during medieval Europe in the 14th century, when the Black Death was spreading. According to a survey by Statistics Korea, more than 80% of young people between 19 to 34 years old were unmarried, and the trend of not having children even after marriage continued. The number of couples who do not have children after marriage stood at 46.4%, while 53.5% of young people responded that there is no need to have children even after getting married, clearly showing negative views on childbirth. A report released by the Bank of Korea also cited high competitive pressure felt by young people, as well as anxiety from employment, housing, and childcare as the reasons for Korea's ultra-low birth rate problem.
저출산이 계속된다면 우리 경제는 성장과 분배라는 거시경제학의 큰 두 가지 목표 모두에서 큰 어려움을 맞게 될 걸로 예상됩니다. 저희 연구팀이 시사한 바에 따르면 효과적인 정책 대응이 없는 경우에 2050년대 우리 경제가 마이너스 성장률을 기록할 확률이 68%로 시산되었습니다. 분배 측면에서도 어려움을 맞게 될 걸로 예상됩니다. 고령층은 다른 세대보다 세대 내의 불평등이 높습니다. 그렇기 때문에 이런 고령층의 비중이 저출산에 따라서 많아지게 되면 경제 전체의 불평등도도 높아지는 효과가 있습니다.
If the declining birth rate continues at this pace, there is a 98% probability that the total population of the country, now at over 51 million, will fall below 37 million by 2070. This means that unless the government can reverse the rapidly falling birth rate, negative growth is not far away.
경쟁 압력과 불안이라는 것이 우리 경제의 구조적인 문제점과 연관되어 있습니다. 예를 들면 노동시장의 이중구조로 인해서 노동시장 간의 격차가 큽니다. 이런 것들을 줄여주게 되면 어떤 양질의 일자리를 향한 그런 경쟁, 그 다음에 고용 불안을 낮춰줄 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그리고 장기적으로는 주택가격 그리고 관련된 가계부채를 안정화시키는 정책이 필요합니다. 저희가 가족 관련 지원을 늘리고 그리고 육아휴직 실이용 기간을 늘리고 하는 여러 가지 사회적인 노력을 한다면 저희 연구팀이 시사한 바에 따르면 우리나라의 합계 출산율이 적게는 0.27명 그리고 최대 0.85명까지 지금보다 더 높아질 수 있는 것으로 그렇게 분석되었습니다.
News Center is ArirangTV's flagship program that quickly delivers accurate news to viewers. We'll review this year with anchor Yoon Suk Yeol, a former presidential office correspondent and now a trustworthy host of the program. Joining me now is the host of News Center and former presidential office correspondent, anchor Yoon Suk Yeol. Sung-min, hello.
Hello, Ms. Orang. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Now, during this past year, while you were anchoring for News Center, was there anyone in particular that stood out for you?
BTS, of course.
BTS.
Oh, we can't leave out BTS. Now all of them are on active duty. I also want to note Jungkook making his debut at #1 spot on the Billboard's Hot 100 earlier.
All right, then aside from K-pop news, is there a particular issue, not person, but an issue that really stood out for you?
Well, I would say a notable change was spotted in foreign policy in 2023. It pretty much boils down to South Korea ramping up its cooperation with its allies and partners. And year 2023 had a special meaning for South Korea and the US because they marked the 70 years of their bilateral alliance. I think that really culminated when President Yoon paid a state visit to the DC back in April, and where he met President Biden and where they announced the Washington Declaration pledging for a stronger extended deterrence, and where they talked about the RRA. I was actually covering this diplomatic event on the site in DC back in April. Well, I had a chance to talk to experts and correspondents about this diplomatic event, why it's important, and they say it's important because the bilateral alliance has been strong, and it's now even stronger because Korea is moving away from the strategic ambiguity and towards strategic clarity as it aims for a global pivotal state.
In 2023, President Yoon Suk Yeol continued his aggressive diplomatic efforts by visiting 19 countries in 13 overseas trips. Yoon began with a visit to the United Arab Emirates, marking the first time for a South Korean leader, and wrapped up in the Netherlands in December. President Yoon's most noteworthy diplomacy was significantly improving relations with Japan. During the South Korea-US summit on April 26th, the Washington Declaration was announced to strengthen nuclear deterrence against North Korea. Additionally, US President Joe Biden invited the leaders of South Korea and Japan to Camp David, a presidential retreat, and major agreements like the spirit of Camp David were adopted.
오늘 우리 새 정상은 처음으로 한미일 단독 정상회담을 갖고 한미일 협력의 새로운 장을 열었습니다. 우리는 또한 북한의 핵 미사일 위협에 대응하기 위한 3국 간 방어 훈련의 중요성에 공감하고 연간 계획에 따라 한미일 훈련을 실시하기로 합의했습니다. 한편
한국이 현재 글로벌 중추국가로서의 위상을 확립해 나가고 있는데요. 그 바탕에 어떤 그 굳건한 한미 동맹이 있다 이렇게 말씀드려도 과언이 아니다 생각하고 있습니다. 한미 동맹이 이제는 70년의 성공적인 역사를 바탕으로 해서 글로벌 포괄적 전략 동맹으로 발전하고 있습니다. 이 얘기는 한미 간의 협력이 군사 안보뿐만 아니라 경제, 기술, 사회, 문화 거의 제반 분야에 걸쳐서 확대되고 있는 걸 얘기를 하는 거고요. 이와 더불어서 동맹의 협력의 범위가 한반도와 동아시아를 뛰어넘어가지고 인도태평양 전 세계로 뻗쳐나가서 전 세계의 책임 있는 행위자로서 한미 동맹이 역할을 하고 있다 이렇게 말씀을 드릴 수 있겠거든요.
President Yoon continues his sales diplomacy, calling himself Korea's #1 salesman. He also visited Middle Eastern countries and made efforts to improve economic diplomacy. Yoon's tour of the Middle East in October led to contracts and MOUs worth around $15.6 billion in Saudi Arabia and $4.6 billion in Qatar. The government is strengthening economic partnerships with the Middle East and supporting Korean companies' advancement into the region. In addition, President Yoon attended the APEC summit and met with global CEOs and received promises of investments to Korea. He briefly met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at a time when ties between Seoul and Beijing were icy. Although there were no in-depth talks, it did lay the foundation for a possible visit by the Chinese leader to South Korea, or for a future summit between the two leaders. President Yoon's final overseas trip of the year resulted in the semiconductor industry cooperation with the Netherlands, a semiconductor powerhouse, being upgraded to an alliance.
현재 윤석열 정부가 글로벌 중추국가로서의 위상을 공고히 하고 이와 더불어서 어떤 세일즈 외교를 통해서 한국의 경제적 이익을 담보하는 그런 외교적 행보를 보이고 있기 때문에 그 이후에 남은 임기 동안 그러한 발걸음을 보다 신속하고 빠르게 해서 보다 더 신뢰할 수 있고 그다음에 튼튼한 그러한 경제 성과를 만드는 것이 필요하다고 생각하고 있습니다.
Are there any topics that you'd like to cover in particular for the coming year?
The key word for 2022 and 2023 has been eruption of conflicts. I would like to see the key word for 2024 to be closures instead of eruptions.
In the year 2024, I hope we see some tangible advances in addressing broader universal concerns such as climate change and human rights, especially those of children, which are often overlooked as some of the adults of this world engage in their squabbles.
This year, we focused on a lot of societal issues. We tried delving into the root causes of the problems. But next year, I hope we can focus more on the solutions that we've made so far.
I hope for a better 2024, and I hope to see South Korea ups its contribution on the global stage next year.
We looked back at the key issues of 2023 with the MCs of ArirangTV. In Part 2 of Reflections on 2023, we invite pundits from 4 major areas to analyze 2023 and venture predictions for what lies ahead in 2024. Once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again in Part 2.